Master morality, a morality concerned with power. Slave morality, a morality concerned with empathy and compassion. Is this master morality versus slave morality dynamic the key divide between moral systems? The most notable and meaningful differentiation? Nietzsche certainly seems to think so. Today I am going to ponder master morality and slave morality. I am going to consider this differentiation. I am going to identify the position of these forms of morality in relation to rationality. Here I am less interested in the deep nuances of Nietzsche's conception of these things. I am primarily interested in the more simplistic common understandings, the understandings effectively summarized in the explanation that I opened this piece with. Dealing with the nuanced and complex is incredibly important, but there is also great value in tackling the deeply significant, albeit more simplistic conceptions that come to develop. So this issue will be discussed in simplistic terms, to the extent that such a thing is possible. Master morality places immense value on strength and power. Slave morality places immense value on empathy and compassion. This key difference is at the heart of a distinction that is based on various differences. Now let us consider the inevitable conclusions of these approaches to morality being embraced. The logical conclusion of master morality is simple: amoral conflict and competition between power-obsessed people. Cruelty and depravity are ultimate displays of power, natural consequences of amoral competition, and inevitable when empathy and compassion are abandoned. These things can be expected to be a constant. The rejection of slavish empathy and compassion leads to there being little to no regard for the well-being of others. In short, the natural conclusion of master morality is an existence characterized by amoral conflict and competition, constant cruelty and depravity, and an utter lack of empathy, compassion, and concern for the well-being of others, for these things are considered slavish traits. Then we have slave morality. The logical conclusion of placing immense value in empathy and compassion is simple: a kind and compassionate society in which the well-being of sentient beings is a major concern. What one of these conclusions do you think is more desirable? As a being who can suffer, which one of these conclusions seems more rationally desirable? When one considers their capacity for suffering, what one of these conclusions logically follows from that consideration? Is master morality or slave morality the friend of one who can suffer? Ponder that question for a moment. That moment is sure to be a rather short one. I think the answer comes rather quickly. When one considers their capacity for suffering, an obvious preference emerges. The options are in essence a state of amoral conflict and competition that suffers from an utter lack of empathy and compassion and an utter abundance of cruelty and depravity, or a state of kindness and compassion in which sentience is respected and the well-being of all is a concern. Truly a mystery which one of these choices is more appealing to one who can suffer. The basis of reason establishes rational moral preferences. Some things logically follow from consideration of one's capacity for suffering. Some things do not. Some things are utterly antithetical to such moral reasoning. Following from consideration of one's capacity for suffering, master morality is identified as what it is: utter irrationality. If the embrace of master morality is not irrational, then nothing is. The conclusions of this moral sentiment induces a shudder in any individual who has even a shred of rationality. Following from consideration of one's capacity for suffering, slave morality is identified as what it is, the rational. If the embrace of slave morality is not rational, then nothing is. Following from consideration of one's capacity for suffering, many rational desires emerge. Few are more rational than the desire to propagate the empathy and compassion that is said to define slave morality. Consideration of the basis of reason has logical conclusions, and those conclusions are very bad for master morality, and very good for slave morality. The meaningful divide between society's many moralities is not between master and slave morality, but instead more and less rational moralities. Moralities that logically follow from the basis of reason, and moralities that do not. And that which has been labelled master morality is one of those less rational moralities, while that which has been labelled slave morality is one of those more rational moralities. The most important divide in moral thought is not between master or slave, just as it is not between realist and anti-realist, or consequentialist and deontologist. The most important divide in moral thought is between rational morality and irrational morality, superior value and inferior value. And who would have guessed that slave morality was the superior, and master morality the inferior? Consult the basis of reason, and sometimes the consequences may surprise you. There is no master or slave morality, only rational and irrational morality. That is the divide that casts a shadow over all others. The master is in truth the slave of irrationality, and the slave the master of rationality. Reason turns the dynamic on its head. The rational versus the irrational, the divide that matters the most, recharacterizes the dynamic, identifies its true philosophical form, the true relationship of superior and inferior. In moral philosophy there is only one true master, the master of rationality. In moral philosophy there is only one true slave, the slave of irrationality. Nothing embodies the slave quite like master morality. Nothing embodies the master quite like slave morality. And so the dynamic is recharacterized by reason, recharacterized by rationality. The values are re-evaluated.